Put your hands together and welcome Mr. Kevin Kelly.
All righty. Thanks very much, Randy. Really appreciate it. So then, how many here have heard of the master cardician Ed Marlo? No. How many here have met the master cardician Ed Marlo? Not too many. Well, there's a handful of us here, and I'm going to bring them up, and we're going to have a little question and answer session. The first person I'd like to introduce is the Las Vegas card man, Mr. Allan Ackerman. Would you come on up, Allan?
Which chair?
How about in the center?
Oh, in the center?
In the center, Allan. Next person I'd like to introduce is a good friend, Bill Malone. Yep. Come on up. And your seat's right there, Bill.
Thank you.
Jimmy Molinari. Is Jimmy Molinari in the house? Jimmy Cards Molinari. And Mr. Randy Wakeman. These are pretty much what's left of the Chicago Roundtable. It's really, what?
We probably only have about 15 minutes.
That's right. It's okay, I got the ambulance. The ambulances are out front, no problem. So what we want to do is open this up right now. If anybody has any questions, or I'll tell you what, rather than do that, I'm going to ask Jimmy, Allan, and Bill maybe to tell us a little good memory that you have of Ed. Bill?
All of my, is this on?
Certainly.
All of my memories with Ed Marlo were really good. The great thing about, first of all, Randy, I got to thank you and Kevin for doing this, because I sit out here and I listen to you guys and it really makes me think about him again, and that's what this is all about. All of us, we were lucky enough to really know who you've all heard of, Ed Marlo, but if you never met him, you have no idea how great this guy was. And I don't mean just as a cardician, I mean as a person. He was one of the most giving people I've ever met. He didn't know me from Adam, and he would sit sometimes for 5-6 hours just showing me one move and making sure that I was doing it perfectly. And he never complained, never once. Well, I had duct tape on him, but he never. Anyway, this is a real pleasure to be here. I'm glad I came to this because it really makes me remember what a wonderful person he is, and I think all you guys agree. We loved him, not just for the card magic, but he was just a great guy to hang around. He had an unbelievable sense of humor. He was literally a genius, and I know what that word genius means, and that's why I use it. You could, when you sat with him, you could just almost feel the wheels in his head spinning as he's talking to you and thinking and creating card magic right in front of you. It was most unbelievable great times of my life, my early life. I wouldn't be around here today, and I don't think any of us really would be. Well, we might be at another hotel, but we wouldn't be in this particular place if it wasn't for Ed Marlo. And anyway, Allan? Yeah. Did you know?
So I got to know Ed visiting. So I started going down to Ireland's Magic Shop on Dearborn Street when I was 13 years old. And then a group of us would all go from Ireland's around the corner to this kind of arcade shop called the Treasure Chest, and there was the demonstrator there would be all doing all these tricks we had when we were 9 years old, and we'd be fooling us with ball and vase and just crazy stuff, and we would always head on down, and yeah, he was nice and nice. I mean, we're all little kids, and he's just having a ball with us and fooling the heck out of us. And then when Randy was doing the 21 card trick. So Ed does that for me. Everybody knows this trick, you know, and he hit on the last card for me. I still remember that today. He says, "Where's your card? What row is it in? It's not there." He said, "Oh, that's because I held out for you, kid." And it just blew me away. And then I got fooled with that miscount trick that Kevin, you did. I got fooled with that. Yeah, that Dave showed me that, but it fooled the heck out of me when he did it with that card jumping from one packet to another. So yeah, I just have just nothing but beautiful memories with Ed. And then when we were over, the Ireland's closed down in '63 and they moved over to Dearborn Street, but somewhere around '67, I think Ed quit demoing for a while at the Treasure Chest. And then he would come over to the magic shop at Ireland's. And then we'd go over to have this lunch at Three Bears restaurant. And then the people there were Miller Lichter. I don't know if Miller's still around. He passed. And Dick Kester and Steve Drawn joined the group. And David was still in the Army because he got drafted. So then, but he got out the last year, so '69, he was always in the session room. And we'd always attract a group. And Ed would constantly perform for the layman at the group, and he was just really a really good entertainer, had great lines, and I always used to laugh with people saying, "Oh, Ed can't perform." And I saw him perform a million times behind the counter for laymen and people coming up the table, "What are you guys doing?" And Ed would always jump in and do something great and often fool the whole gang of magicians too. Yeah. All right, so Randy.
Well, don't forget about the Crandall's
okay.
bar.
All right,
That's,
so
that's the winner.
So Ed just knew me at first just as this kid magician with the other kids at the junior magician circle coming in and kind of watching what Ed was doing. And I remember one time I'm 16 years old or 17 years old, and I'm just kind of working on my zero, and we go into the treasure chest. My girlfriend's with me, and I don't know. I asked Ed something about the zero and this or that, and it might have been I don't like slip cuts or something like that, and Ed did some. I think he might have done the shank shuffle, and I get this nudge from my girlfriend. I said, "Boy, he sure does that better than you do." So anyway, but I was a kind of a kid stage prop guy when I got started in magic from seeing Doc Tarbell, had a full evening show at York High School, and Rockenbaumer was in the same show. I learned that years later. He said, "I was at that show too." So that was kind of fun. And so anyway, Harlan Tarbell's son, Gene, taught a class at the YMCA, so he was my first mentor. As a 10-year-old kid, 3 years, and he told me about Ireland, so I started going down to the magic shop at Ireland's. And then they had a club called the Junior Magician Circle that they sponsored, met over at the Palmer House. And then, so I did that, and that closed, and then, but anyway, Jim Kanega, I still remember the guy's name. I don't know where he is, but he's about 15, he shows me Brother John's Macro. And I just fooled the heck out of me. And then he was nice enough to show me the method. And I thought the method's as good as the trick. And I said that was it. I was just hooked on cards right there. And somebody told me to get Erdnase, so I did. And the chapter, first 4 or 5 pages says, of all the moves in the book, what's probably the most versatile bottom deal? So I worked on that real hard. And it took me 6 months to get it down. And then Charlie Miller was staying at Ireland's, getting his teeth done upstairs at Jay's. So he would come down and and hang around with the guys. And then one day Jay was talking to me. I said, I saw Charlie do this move. He was doing, you know how these dealers always have. Let's see if I got one here. I usually carry one in my pocket so I don't. Yeah, these things. Cut card. And they put those on the bottom of the deck, and then you could still do bottoms. And I saw Charlie do that, you know, the other day. So Charlie comes on down. And I said, Charlie, can you do that move for me? Nah, just stick with the bottom deal, kid. That's a waste of time. So he wouldn't show me. So, but I was still fascinated with the idea, so I worked out my own technique, and then I was doing it at all the clubs and at the IBM meeting and the Mazda Mystic ring. And so I get a phone call from, he said, this is Ed Marlo. I thought, wow. He said, yeah, I hear you're doing this Greek bottom deal. I'd love to see you do it. He said, why don't you meet me down at Crandall's, the bar, because he still had a bar in Chicago. I said, well, I'm still a teenager. He won't let me in. He said, oh, he'll let us in. We'll go in the back and have dinner. And so I taught Ed one thing, and he taught me 1,000. But anyway, but here's this funny story. So Kreskin's on the TV, all right? And Ed said he's doing something with Cy Stebbins, and he noticed there's 3 clubs on the bottom. And so he's just doing this trick at the bar and everything. It's gonna be the 6 of hearts, Marlo screaming it out. And this is a live TV show. And then, you know, of course, the ending was the 6 of hearts. Nobody was impressed with Kreskin. They were all impressed, the whole bar. How the heck did you know that?
That's a great story.
Yeah. Okay, Barry.
Well, there's a bunch of them. 40 years ago, when I picked up Eddie in my little Honda Prelude to drive down here, the way Eddie was, he was constantly at his clipboard, and he was always writing. And then when he was working on a move, he's puffing on the cigar. The more he liked the move, the more he puffed. So it was like a Cheech and Chong movie, because it's a little 2-seater sports car. The moonroof is open, and it's just cigar smoke is just pouring out. Right, I could barely see. There was so much smoke in the car, and Ed gets a little unhappy with me. You know, he says, "Oh, that was great. That was great. That's a good action. That's a good action. That's really good. Oh, man, that's good." I said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I didn't see it." And he's like, "What the hell?" He says, "If you're not going to pay attention, I'm just not going to show you this stuff anymore." And I said, well, Ed, you know, we're doing 75 miles an hour in a sports car, and I'm just trying to keep, you know, the world's greatest card man alive for a little while longer, at least until after the lecture. He's like, okay. So one night I'm up at Eddie's place. He lived in Sacramento Avenue, kind of a nice neighborhood, generally, Logan Square. So I don't know, we had a project going. I was shooting some pictures for one of his books, and he was posing for the pre-illustrated photographs for Randy Wakeman Presents. And I had mentioned to Ed I had 2 new bricks of bicycles in the back of the car, and I was driving a beater. It was an old gray, brown Buick Skylark. So we're up all night. Muriel comes out, you know, bring coffee, and Eddie would say, oh, don't wait up, Muriel. Don't wait up, Muriel. Randy and I, we're going to be up all night long, right? So away we go. At the end of the night, I come down and I notice every window was smashed out of my car. I'm parked right in front of it. It's too flat, and there's glass all over the front seat, all over the back. Ed comes down, he takes a look. He's like, oh, that's a real shame. That's a shame. They didn't get your cards, did they? That's all he cared about was the 2 new bricks of cards. The glass all over. It's like, oh, they didn't get the cards, did they? And that was it. So I just laughed all the way home. It was cold. It was raining, rain, snow, broken windows. It was a cold ride home. But, huh? No, they didn't get the cards. No, I checked. I brushed back all the glass. I said, no, no, the cards are fine. He said, oh, thank God, thank God. Didn't care about the car, you know, the broken windows and stuff. So those are just a couple. There's a lot of stories. And Jimmy Cards, got a couple things?
Yeah, maybe. I met Eddie in January of '76 because of this guy. When I started at Mr. C's in '75, there was a young underage Randy Wakeman working the bar. And we got to be friends. You know, we worked together every weekend. And somewhere along the line, Randy says, you know, with all your interest in cards and all you're doing is cards, have you ever met Ed Marlo? And I said, no. I mean, obviously I knew him because if you ever buy the old little books, he always had his address stamped in there and his name and everything. And I said, I know who he is, but no, I never met him. So Randy says, well, why don't we just go up to the restaurant one weekend? So in my era, it was now the Palladium instead of the Three Bears. They called it the Palladium restaurant, right down the street from the old Magic Ink. So we went up there, and that's when I met him. It was a lot of fun. It was me, Randy, Mr. C's, and I think Gino. You remember Gino? He used to work at C's. It was just the four of us, and Ed came in around noon, like he always did. He would meet his group. We were sitting at a table. We had just finished eating. Ed comes in, walks by us all the way to the other side of the restaurant, sits down. So we're sitting, I mean, obviously we all know who he is. So we're sitting there. We just get through eating. We take out our cards. I put the cards on the table, and I go, Ed gets up, walks all the way back over by us, and he introduces himself to us. And I said, well, yeah, we know who you are. Our luck was that Steve, in my era, was Steve Drawn, Simon Aronson, Dave Solomon. All three of them were still out of town because of the holidays and stuff, so they never showed. So Ed sat down with us. I noticed real quick, the four of us at the table, all the cards disappeared, except for me. I still had my cards out in front of me. And somebody said, well, show Eddie something. And I said, okay. I didn't know what to do, so I did a gambling. I used to do cheating at blackjack. And I did it for Ed. And you're playing cards, and a lot of times I was just really so subtle, you didn't realize what was happening until a few hands. So, you know, I deal him his cards, and I'd say, 15, you want a card or you want a stick? And you look at his card and you go, wait a minute, how'd you know I got, you know, that kind of thing. So we did it for a while, and Ed said, obviously I know what you're doing. I've seen it before. He says, but I don't see it. Your moves, the way you're moving your hands and the naturalness, you don't see the peaks. And I thought that was really nice of him. And I'll give you one other piece of advice he gave me once. When you're working on a move, I had seen and heard of course, the center deal. And I asked Ed, could you show me something I can practice? And he said, yeah. And we were at like a Saturday afternoon session. He said, yeah, but not here. You know, we'll meet Sunday for dinner. And I said, okay. So I meet him back at the Palladium again. We eat, and he started showing me the center deals, and he's doing them. And of course, you don't see nothing. And I said, oh, you know, I'm trying to get the grip and stuff. He gets up, and this is how he was. He'd walk around behind me, take your hand, put this here, this here, this here, hold the deck. And I'm looking at the deck, and I said, I can't do this. And it said, you're right, you can't do it. My first thought was, well, thanks a lot for the help, Ed. And what he's telling you is, if you tell yourself you can't do it, you won't do it. That's what you got to get by. And I always remembered that for other stuff that I practice. You just got to work at it. And if you get that negative train of thought, you're done. And I always remembered him, it's like Bill said, he was, you know, he's very giving. I mean, he'd sit at the table, anything you wanted to see, he'd show you. Now, when I met him in '76, he had to be like 61, just going on 62. But he was still very well primed. And he was funny at that table because if he knew that your interest was passes, he'd show you a trick with passes. If he knew your interest was false deals, he'd show you tricks with false deals. He knew everybody's to get them. It was very good. His memory was sharp. You could, you know, Ed, I was working on this trick. I think it's buried in the Cardition. So, oh yeah, I remember that. And he'd just do it for you. You know, if something wasn't in print for years, it might take him a minute or so, but he'd wind up doing it for you. He was a special kind of guy. And I'll leave you with one story. It's not mine. Dave Solomon told me this. And if I got the names wrong, you guys let me know if you know better. But Eddie and who was I can't think of the name. Oh, Johnny Thompson, I think. They're having lunch. And Eddie's, and I don't know, you guys are all familiar with this. If you get Royal Road, you learn it real quick. It's called the piano card trick. And Ed's doing the piano card trick for Johnny Thompson. And he goes through the trick and blah, 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 blah. And he says, single card. And he shows the ace of spades. And Johnny Thompson says, what? And Ed says, are you paying attention? He said, let me do this again. And he takes this stuff and he goes through it. And he asked Johnny, one card. He said, do you remember the name of the odd card? And Johnny Thompson says, if you're telling me that's the ace of spades, I'll shit. And it says, shitter's over there.
Well, I'll do a quick story that shows Ed's intensity when he got onto an idea. He's going to a hotel for dinner with Simon, Ginny, Dave Solomon, and Madeline, and of course Muriel. So the four of them are crammed in the back seat. David's up front. Dave has this idea for a card problem while they're driving, and he mentions it to Ed, you know, just over his shoulder. Ed gets quiet, and they pull up to this hotel, and there's a concierge and valet. The valet takes the car away. So they get into the reservation area. David looks around and says, where's Ed? And everybody shrugged there. And so David goes out quickly and asks the valet guy, that car, was there an old guy? Yeah, he's up on the second level in the car. David goes up, and there's Ed. He's got cards spread across the back seat. And Dave says, Eddie, what are you doing? And he says, I'm working on a fifth method. And that's what he do. So does anybody here have any questions?
I got to tell one story.
There you go.
So when I first met Marlo, I never knew who he was. All I knew was he was a magician that wrote a book on card magic, and you had to buy it from him. So I had no idea he was a legend in card magic. I didn't know anything about him. So I was never intimidated by him. I just thought of him as just a really great guy who's great with card tricks, right? So after about 3 weeks of going down every Saturday and meeting with him and the guys, my friend Bill Dennis, he started seeing Marlo with me. You knew Bill, right? Yeah, and Randy, I think. And so Randy would always tell me, Bill, you're going to get thrown out of there someday. Marlo's going to say, Bill, don't come down here anymore, because I'm always joking around my whole life. Yeah, Bill Dennis. He'd always tell me that, though. So one day, me and Bill Dennis and Marlo are sitting at Tony's restaurant we used to all meet in, and I'm sitting right across from Marlo, and Bill's next to me. And the reason I'm telling you Bill was there, the guy that said you're going to get thrown out someday, I thought this was the day. So I'm working on a move that Marlo's showing me, and Marlo says, you're doing that wrong. Here, come here, let me show you. And I go to bring my hands closer to him, because they like to grab your hands and show you where your fingers go. So I lean forward, and my hand hits his glass of wine. And Marlo was always a classy dresser. He always wore a blazer, right? He was always dressed up. And this wine goes all over him. Now, this is terrible, what just happened. But because Bill's been telling me for weeks, you're going to get thrown out, Marlo's going to tell you never come back here again, all I could think of was Bill was right. This is the day. And I feel my shoulders start doing this, which means I'm ready to laugh. But it wasn't funny. It was just funny that it happened. So right like where you guys are saying, where Gary's sitting there, is the restroom door to go to the restroom. So I don't laugh out loud. I hurry up, I put my napkin on the table, and I go into the restroom. I laugh, and then I wash my face, and I come out. And when I come out, Marlo's got the napkin, and he's wiping his shirt still. And all I hear, he doesn't even look up. All I hear is, I can hear you in there. You know. And I said, man, if he didn't throw me out now, I'm in for good. So I had another good 11 years, because if he didn't throw me out for that, that was a true story. My third week.
Anybody have any questions for us? Now's the time. Yes, Harrison.
Question, when did all of you know you were in? That you passed that threshold, that like...
Well, once we paid the first $100,000 initiation fee. Yeah, no, we paid 100. We paid a lot. You were in. You know what you needed to get into Marlo's group? You needed passion for card magic. If you love card magic, Marlo didn't care if you were black, white, green, purple, didn't care if you were big, tall, short, didn't care who you were, he would befriend you. If you took it seriously. Yeah, don't throw wine on him. No. Water's okay. That comes off, as we know it does. Yeah, they tell him what you did. Never mind. Don't tell him. But
You know, we didn't really necessarily know. There wasn't, I don't think, a defining moment where there's an in and out, because it wasn't a group. It wasn't a club. It wasn't anything. It wasn't a fraternity, as some have referred it to. It was just a bunch of guys that love card tricks. And so you were in and weren't afraid of exclusion at all. It's just you were welcome. So you're in if he says hi and you shake his hand. That's it. That's it. If you love card magic, you come back. So you define what's in and out, not him. Or you come in and he's there, because he's going to be there the whole time. And all of us would come and go. And there was almost like an orbit of people, at different levels that, it started with Chicago and all of the close people in Chicago. And then there were other people on the outside where, like, for instance, Don England and myself, we didn't go there every weekend. And so we were sort of on the outer side. There's John Rockerbomber. But it had all these close people, but it reached out almost like like a planet, a sun, all of these people. And when you think about all of the creativity that Ed Marlo spawned there, all of these people have done incredibly creative things. And there's others, and it's all because of Ed. He did it. And he didn't mean to. He wasn't thinking about it. He just said, no, you're doing that wrong. And that's that.
one of the, I think you'll all agree, one of the big bonuses of being at Marlo's table was not only are you around Ed Marlo and you're meeting each other and you're becoming friends, but people came from all over the world to see Ed Marlo. Any given Saturday, you had no idea who was going to be at that table. And for me, it was always great because, again, I was very naive when I was young. I didn't know who these guys were, like Percy Diaconis or Ricky Jay, or somebody would come to the table and Marlo would say, "This is Bill. Bill, do a trick for them." And stupid me, I just grabbed the cards and start doing a trick. If I would have known who they were, I know I wouldn't have even done that. But because of that, you got to meet all these unbelievable magicians. Every Saturday, you never knew, right? You never knew who was going to be there, you know. But, so I'd throw wine on all of them, you know. I'd like, hey, here you go, Percy. Here you go, Ricky. Yeah. So,
Bill, tell them your story about when you're sitting at the table, sometimes they would take the cards and they would go below the tabletop.
Oh, yeah, that's a great story.
all right. Well, so when I bought that book on the first day, Marlo said after we had dinner and we're leaving, and my brain is fried, all the stuff that he showed me, and I'm thinking, I thought I knew card tricks, but I knew after that first meeting with Marlo. I knew nothing about card tricks. But so he invited me to come to the table. He said, we meet with the guys every Saturday, and you should come down. So I take him up on that. I go there, and I have a good time. And I go to the next Saturday. I have a good time. Third Saturday, I had Steve Drawn says to me, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, sure. He said, we don't want you down here. Just like that. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, our time with Eddie is our time. And you coming down here, you're taking up our time with Ed Marlo. And now, again, you got to remember, I didn't even know he was a legend or anything. So this really took me by surprise. Like, I took it personally, like, oh, you don't like me and you don't want me down here. And then I got kind of mad about it because I thought Marlo invited me, so I'm coming down here, you know. So I came down every week. And in the beginning, they were so secretive. And when I say they, it was mostly Dave and not Simon as much, but Dave and Steve more than anybody. But they would do tricks under the table for each other, you know, just so I couldn't see it. So this happened about 2 weeks in a row, and maybe the third week it was, they start doing it. And Marlo was never like that. Marlo was always talking to me, and that's what they didn't like, because I was getting his time, right? So when they started doing that, one day I got up and I got out of my chair and I went under the table. And I start telling Marlo, but from under the table, oh, Ed, it's nothing. It's just like a one-hand tilt move, but he's flashing the move anyway. So Marlo would laugh, or then I'd come out, they'd laugh. So that's what stopped them from doing that. Just that one joke that one day when everybody laughed and Marlo felt it was funny too, that stopped them from doing it. But in the beginning, it was so weird. But then as time went on, everybody at that table became my family. You know, Steve, everybody, Steve Drawn. Steve Drawn was always crazy, but that's what he said to me. Can you, you know, now I'm getting mad about it. The more I think about this, yeah, I'm going to get him someday. I am. No matter what I do. Anyway, I'm really mad. Yeah.
I had the same experience because when I first met Ed, like I said, they were out of town. There was nobody there. And Ed said the same thing. You know, we meet every Saturday. Why don't you come up? And I said, okay. So I came back the next Saturday. Nobody showed up. It was just me, Ed. I came back the next Saturday, and they were all back. And out of all of them, I agree with Bill. Steve Drawn was the toughest nut to crack. But Steve Drawn was also very good at what he did. He was excellent at all kinds of magic. But Dave would warm up to you. Simon would warm up to you. But that was tough to break in. And then after a few weeks, just like Bill, they just get used to you. You're going to be there. You know, they see that you really do have an interest. You know, you're not there trying to rip Eddie off or anything. You're trying to learn. Yeah. Yeah, so it was some fun times. And Bill's right. That was the place to be. Anybody came to town, they came to see Ed, and that was a good way to meet a lot of people.
Another thing about Marlo, you have to know, no matter who was there at the table, Marlo always knew what you liked. Like Steve Drawn was into sleight of hand things, and so was I. I was a move monkey from the very beginning. So you know, Dave was into creating card tricks. You know, a lot of times Dave didn't care about sleight of hand, and it showed sometimes because he didn't practice a lot. Simon liked stacked decks and liked mathematical principles, and so Marlo would show each guy what they were really into. But Steve Drawn, and this is the reason you brought him up, Steve Drawn was an unbelievable sleight of hand guy, and he was a perfectionist. But you knew whenever Steve would say to you, hey, can I show you a trick? I would sit up because I knew I was going to be fooled every single time. And before he could ever do it, he had to go in the women's bathroom because they had a big mirror, and he would go in there and practice the trick to get the angles perfect. So every time I saw him coming out of the women's bathroom, I'm thinking, come over to me, baby. You know what I mean? Come on, just keep moving. And he would come over and do a trick, and it would always fool you. So even though we started off that relationship with don't come down here anymore, Steve Drawn, after Marlo passed away, became one of my closest friends, and we got together all the time. And he really was one of the best sleight of hand guys I ever saw. He just understood the things that made magic great. So there were so many great times. I mean, all of you, it's all right. I just had enough of that. You know, I can't hold. It's weird. I can't. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, we could go on and on. I really want to thank Bill, Allan, and Jimmy for coming up, because this was last minute. I sort of just called up. Him and I are still stuck here for a while. So I want to thank you guys. Please give them a huge round of applause. Thanks for coming up. Yep.